Hi everybody, this is Celeste. I'm a Nationally Certified Interventionist, and I want to thank everybody for joining my mini training course on how to set effective boundaries with someone in addiction without pushing them further away. So for those of you who don't know a lot about me, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to be an interventionist. So I'm currently in recovery and have been for quite a few years, and I'm in recovery because somebody did an intervention on me. And I wanted to start paying it forward by helping other families do an intervention. Now, having said that, I know from the addict's perspective what that mind frame feels like and what it feels like to be in that cycle of addiction. And I also have several family members who have been in active addiction, several friends who have been in active addiction, and I've lost loved ones to addiction. So I really know what it feels like to be on both sides of the fence. And I think boundaries play a key role in enabling addiction to continue. And so what is a boundary? A boundary is something that we set with somebody else to protect ourselves from being harmed, either spiritually, physically, mentally, financially, sexually, physically, whatever it might be. And it's very much like drawing a very clear line in the sand and letting that person know in an assertive way what we need and what we want and what we expect from them and from that relationship. So, and I know just the lack of boundaries in any relationship, especially when it comes to addiction, can create so much chaos in the addict's life and in the family member's life and in other relationships. So how many of you, give me a thumbs up if you guys are struggling from that perspective of feeling like you're in chaos because of a lack of boundaries and addiction. So thumbs up if you're feeling that way. And what do a lack of boundaries look like? What does that, what precedent is that? So, and why do people not set boundaries? So, not setting boundaries, people a lot of times don't set boundaries because, they're afraid. They don't want to be rejected. They want to feel accepted. They want to feel like they're part of that person's life. So not setting boundaries can be saying yes to things that you don't ethically agree with, things that you don't want to do, things that you might be helping that person, thinking that you don't want to say no because you want to help that person when it's really just enabling them to continue in that behavior. And what it does is it helps them to continue in that behavior and not have the natural consequences of their addiction. So if you're saying yes to giving them money or giving them a place to stay, or you might be giving them money so they're not out stealing or robbing somebody or potentially hurting somebody to get that money to feed their addiction. So that's really preventing them from not coming to the natural consequences of their addiction. And a lot of times people do this with the best of intentions and wanting to help that person, and they love that person and don't want to see them suffer, right? Because that's what addiction really is it's somebody living a lifestyle that's really in a place of suffering and hurt. And that suffering and hurt really ripples out to the family and friends and co-workers and everybody that this person knows. So it's not just the addict that suffers, it's everybody around them. And the chaos ripples out. And even if there isn't conflict among you and the addict that you love, sometimes it's affecting other family relationships. Maybe family members don't agree with you not setting boundaries and want you to set those boundaries and engage in tough love, and it can be very, very difficult, and it can be exhausting for the person. And often people start out trying to help that person, and addiction comes on so gradually, right? And I know many people have experienced drinking, and yeah, it's great in the beginning, and And when I first started drinking, it was great. I'd have a drink and it would ease my social anxiety, and I wouldn't be so anxious, and I could go out and talk to people and have that social lubricant, and it was really effective, and I'd be all full of energy and bubbly and personality. And then gradually it started to become just detrimental, and I wouldn't get the same effects, and I would drink but not feel quite the same oomph or energy or charisma that maybe I had when I was drinking before. And it progresses so gradually over time that a lot of times even the addict doesn't see it in themselves. The family members don't see it because it happens so gradually. And the family tends to want to reach out and help that person when consequences start to come on. Maybe they lose their job, and that it just sucks that happened to that person at that time, and maybe you don't even associate it to the drinking yet, but and that's where addiction is so sneaky, and it sneaks up on you, and it sneaks up on the family, and denial starts to creep in, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in this place where you're starting to really do things and support behaviors that you don't agree with, and you don't want to give that person money to buy drugs, or support them having kids in the house around these addictive behaviors, and the chaos, and the kids being neglected, or whatever it is that you start to see these things and wonder, how did I get here? How did I start supporting this behavior and this chaos, and the abuse, and all this stuff that goes on within addiction? And so many people struggle and suffer, and things like that in addiction, not just the addict but the family, and it's really, really hard, and you get to a point where you don't know how you got there. And that's what this course is really about, is looking at some of those negative consequences of not setting boundaries and enabling that person to continue in that behavior. And next time, in the next module, we're going to start to talk a little bit more about those negative consequences that people struggle with in not setting boundaries. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting for the support system of an addict. And when they feel bad in their addiction, they get to go out and drink and use, and the people around them just get to feel bad, right? They don't get that same escape that the addict gets. So setting boundaries is absolutely crucial to helping the person who's struggling in addiction. And for all the best intentions that so many people in the support system come into the relationship with, they start to realize that it's just not working anymore, and in fact it's actually making the situation worse. And then they get to that point and go, I've been doing this for so long, I don't know where to go, I don't know where to turn, I don't know what to do next. How do I make that next change in the process? Because what I'm doing isn't working for anybody. And I really, really feel very passionate about this, because I was somebody that, even in my active addiction, a lot of my drinking behaviors were around not being able to set effective boundaries and feeling like I was a doormat, and it led to anxiety, and drinking was really the only escape for me. So personally, even from the addict's perspective, I get the consequences of not setting those healthy boundaries, and it can be very difficult to do, because I wanted to be loved, I wanted to be accepted, I wanted to have friends, I wanted people to like me, I wanted to please everybody around me. I didn't want to have conflict. Oh my gosh, I was so afraid of conflict. And I imagine that a lot of family members of people in addiction struggle with that. They don't want to create that conflict by setting boundaries, because a lot of times it is easier to not set boundaries with that person and avoid the blow up that's going to happen. Because a lot of times when you approach someone who's in active addiction and try to set a boundary, if you can't do it in an effective way, there is that strong potential for conflict and blow ups. And that's really what effective boundary setting sets out to do, is to set those boundaries in such a way that both people feel validated, and both people feel like they're walking away from that situation feeling heard, and like they're getting their needs met in that relationship. But you have to get to a point where you feel like, I can't go on like this anymore. And you have to feel like the pain of change, staying the same, has to be greater than the pain of change. So it's very important to recognize when you get to that point and say, I'm so exhausted, I can't do this anymore. And that's really what we're going to be learning through the next couple of days. So tomorrow, at 6 o'clock, we're going to be talking about the negative consequences of not setting boundaries. And I think a lot of people are really going to resonate with a lot of these negative consequences, because a lot of times when people are in that active addiction, the support system takes on that enabling role, and the addict passes the negative consequences on to the people that love them. And so it's really important that in setting these effective boundaries, that we can stop taking on the addict's negative consequences and putting the consequences back on them, so they can start feeling the pain of their own addiction. Because like I said, there isn't going to be change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. So making them feel that pain of their consequences, it's not about being cruel or malicious. It's just about allowing them to feel the natural consequences of their own addiction instead of taking it upon yourself, so that it gives them the motivation and incentive to change. So tune in tomorrow, and we're going to start to talk about some of those negative consequences. And I'd like for everybody to come prepared with some questions to put in the comments. We'll answer some questions along the way. So if you guys have questions throughout the course of the training session, I want you to throw those in there so that we can have some interactive Q&A at the end of tomorrow's modules. So I hope you guys will all tune again tomorrow, and I appreciate you joining. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope everybody stays safe out there. And for those of you in recovery, keep up the good work. And for those of you who are struggling in addiction or have a family member that's struggling in addiction, I hope you'll reach out and get the support that you need and deserve. Have a good night, everybody.